What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another Lost Wave interview. Today's Artist's Mystery takes us back to 2015 in a KFC in Russia. This location is where What's That Song user Tipo Duel first heard a certain pop tune that instantly caught his ear. According to him, this song played there every day, so eventually he asked the manager about the track, who promised to find the name of the artist and the song for him. A few days go by, and the manager isn't able to give a name. But he is able to give Tipo an MP3 file with this song on it, along with a few others. Tipo takes this audio and uploads it to What's That Song on July 18th, 2015. While the song was mysterious, it went under the placeholder name, I'll Show You My Hand. It was also found to be used in an old AMV music video for the Korean cartoon There She Is, somewhere between 2013 to 2015. A Reddit user named JustAnotherUser4635 claimed that they had this AMV downloaded on an old laptop they stumbled across, but they never knew the name of the song. It's unclear as to where the AMV uploader got the audio from. The song would finally be solved on July 7th, 2023 when Discord user Blue came across an artist called Happy Ashtray. He noticed that the singer sounded identical to the lost track. Plus, they had a song listed on Last.fm titled Show You My Hand. When reaching out to him, he confirmed that the song was his. It was discovered that the track was actually called Show You My Hand by Happy Ashtray, aka John Swamy, featuring his good friend Claire Baldwin. And today I am thrilled to have John here today to discuss everything regarding his musical tenure. So sit back, relax, light up a doobie, make sure you have an ashtray nearby, and enjoy. Alright everyone, I have Mr. John Swamy here today from Happy Ashtray. John, thank you so much for your time. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Nikki. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Appreciate you taking the time to do this little interview here today. I just want to ask, just because it is a genuine curiosity of mine, what is the backstory behind the name Happy Ashtray?
Somehow I knew that was going to be one of your questions. It dates back many, many years. It started as a joke. A friend of mine came up with it on a whim, and I used it on my first, this is back in the days of cassettes, and I used that name on my first little demo that I made, and for some reason it just stuck. Many, many years later, it's still the name I use. It's not anything I can explain. There's not really a meaning behind it. A number of people have thought it was a weed reference, but it's not, like it or not, but yeah, that's kind of the deal. It's sort of just a non sequitur that stuck.
Yeah, and I like it because it's one of those just band names that, like, you just have two words that just you never hear together, Happy and Ashtray. It's like a Foghat, Dave Previtt when he first came up with that band. He was playing Scrabble when he was a kid, and he put the names Fog and Hat together. Years later, he made that a band name, so it was fascinating. I had a feeling it was something like that because it has that kind of tone to it, but Right.
You have a way of sticking. Like you use it initially as a placeholder, and the next thing you know, it's kind of everybody knows that name, so you can't really change it.
Right, exactly, and it kind of rolls off the tongue, like Happy Ashtray. Like when it got solved, I'm like, oh, that's kind of a cool name.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the mystery and how that started. I mean, we can talk about that whenever, but
right, yeah.
It was news to me to get messages from random people about this one song from. Boy, I think I wrote it in the late 90s.
Well, just for a quick backstory, so the song Show You My Hand, which is featured on your first album, as well as Demolition Love, which is like a compilation album, right?
Right, both of which are unreleased, actually. There's artwork floating around for both of those and songs for both of those, but I never actually released either of those. And I can tell you I'm working on a remaster now of the first one, Everybody Sees You. So that will be an official release, or at some point when I get finished.
Okay. Yeah, and so the way it was found, the backstory is kind of confusing. The guy who originally found it, he's a What's That Song user named, I think it's Tipo Duels. That's his username. He said he was in a KFC in Russia in 2015. He heard the song. He got it from the audio file from there, but he was never able to identify it.
A KFC in Russia? That's amazing.
Yes. When I was asking my resources, I was like, listen, the KFC's in Russia, right? They're like, yeah. I'm like, okay. I just want to make sure I heard that correctly.
I mean, you couldn't make up a better story. That's great.
Yeah, and the way it was solved was a Discord user named Blue. He found your discography on Last.fm. He saw the song listed there, and then that's how it was solved from there.
Okay, wow.
No one knows how it ended up in Russia, especially considering it was unreleased in both ways, from the compilation and the actual album. So how it got there, we have no idea.
I can tell you, I made, for this album, if you will, Everybody Sees You, I made my own CDRs and artwork and distributed them myself. I sent them to my local station in Chicago. I was living in Chicago at the time. And there's a DJ on WXRT, Richard Milne, who was doing a local music show, and he picked it in his top 5 of 2001.
Ooh.
And so that was very flattering, but I wonder if somehow that, and I actually went into the station for an interview around then, and I wonder if somehow that got shared somewhere somehow. But it's fascinating all this time later that song has kind of struck a chord with people.
I can say for myself, I absolutely love it. I think it's a beautiful song. You know, like
That's awesome.
the vocals are just super playful, super warm. Just we wanted to find out who this artist was just because it was that good of a song, and it was wholesome in a way, you know.
Well, oh yeah, it does have a wholesome feel. I have to give credit to my friend Claire Baldwin, who's singing on it with me. It was a duet from the start.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of imagine it as just a couple talking to each other, singing to each other about being vulnerable, really, when it comes down to it. So that's cool. Yeah, I've always had a pop sensibility, pop rock, and always looking for the next hook. I'm excited that this song is kind of finding a new life.
Yeah, and I'm excited for you because, you know, here we are talking, you know. Had it not gone mysterious,
right.
we wouldn't be here to this day.
I thought for a little while like it might be some kind of a scam. I'm very cynical. I've had identity theft issues in the past, and so it took me a while to really kind of vet this and figure out that it was for real. So
you're not alone in that. Many of other former mysterious artists have had that exact same reaction. Like, I still talk to some till to this day, and like they tell me about that. Like, yeah, I thought it was a scam at first because here hundreds of people are messaging me out of nowhere, like I won the lottery or something. You mentioned you're originally from Chicago, correct?
Correct.
What was the music scene like in your area at the time you started releasing your work, and did it have an influence on the music you were making?
At that time, I was most influenced by Beck. That album Odelay really made a mark on me. I think that came out in '96, and it just kind of festered in me for a while. I was so into the music he was making, but also the hooks, the songs themselves. So I was kind of trying to emulate him. I was sort of working with drum loops and synth drums and not live drums. I later transitioned into that, but it was more of a kind of like putting together songs almost like Frankenstein. You know, the scene in Chicago was pretty awesome. Like, we had Smashing Pumpkins and Liz Phair and all these other bands that were coming out of the city that time. So it felt like a really interesting time for the city. And I can't recall, because this is late 90s that I was working on this stuff. I can't recall anything during that time that was directly influencing me, but definitely Beck was a big part of that. Big part of it informed like what kind of music I wanted to try and make.
I'm not too familiar with Beck. I know a few songs by him. Isn't he similar in the sense that like his songs have a lot of different flavors? Sometimes they're more like
totally
like alternative influence. Sometimes they're more like dance. Maybe I don't know. I'm not familiar with his discography.
Well, you might want to check out the album Odelay. It's the one with Devil's Haircut and Where It's At. Some of his more timeless singles, but the whole album is just a really nice pastiche of what you just described, like different sounds, different grooves. I always like his sort of esoteric lyrics too. I'd recommend that to anybody listening who doesn't know too much about him.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out because, you know, the few songs I do know by Beck I do really like. And from my ear, you know, I haven't listened to your entire discography. I've listened to a lot of what's available. I've heard Hear Me In, Weather Vane, and Do I Have to Travel Far? And then, of course, the few songs that are available online from Demolition Love.
Sure.
Including I'll Show You My Hand. And I think one of my favorite things about your music is your vocals. Like, they work really well with a nice poppy acoustic piece like Show You My Hand, but then at the same time, they also have like a really good country rock sound to them. Like, when I listen to B Cat Drum Egg, that's a 70s country rock song if I've ever heard one. I absolutely loved everything about it.
That's great. That's so great to hear. It was my friend actually came up with a list of song titles once, and he said, if you want to just write a song to this title, give it a shot. So he wrote down B Cat Drum Egg. I have no idea what the meaning is, but I wrote the song to that title.
Yeah, it doesn't even stand for anything.
You mentioned country rock. I have to mention Wilco too. There was a big influence on me. They put out their first record, I think, in 95, 96. And I definitely was hooked, you know, pretty much from the start with them. The songwriting and Jeff Tweedy's vocals for sure.
Any influence from the band Ween by any chance? Because I've heard a few similarities there as well.
Not directly. I mean, I like Ween. They have some great songs. I would also throw in the Flaming Lips. They were a pretty big influence and definitely have sort of a, more of a fantastical or a psychedelic sound that I was drawn to.
Yeah.
I love Wayne Coyne's voice too, from the Lips. He's got such a great voice.
I'll be honest, like, you're listening to all these artists I just haven't listened to yet. I've heard of every single one of them, but
problem.
I haven't listened to yet, because it's cool, because I listen to a lot of classic rock, 70s, 60s, so when I heard your stuff, I was hearing more of, like, influence from, like, Ween. I heard a little bit of Skinner, some of the Doors, like, these classic rock bands. But it seems like when you were making music at the time, you're more influenced by like stuff that's from like the 90s and I think the 80s, stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I came of age in the 80s. So I was born in the 70s and was listening to, the radio at 12, 13 in the 80s. And it was like David Bowie, Devo, the Talking Heads, that kind of stuff. I guess I was kind of informed by the music at that time in the 90s, and I was kind of trying to fit into that groove, I guess. But I guess, I'm like you. I like classic rock. I like even earlier stuff like Chuck Berry and older blues artists.
Yeah.
And so I like Keith Richards. His quote is like, I'm influenced by everything I've ever heard.
Right.
Whether you know it or not.
When making your albums, did you do all the instrumentations yourself?
I did.
Okay. So then
I do for most of the release stuff. I have some drummers who have come in. I love playing drums, but I have to admit, like, I'm not, if there's a better drummer nearby, I'm going to grab him and use him. So I've had a few different drummers play on my stuff, but I do all the guitars and bass and whatever keys and vocals myself.
And that's got to be, like, pretty cool, but that's also probably going to be pretty stressful and pretty time consuming. But I do want to ask then, what have you found to be the most rewarding thing as an independent artist?
Well, most rewarding is when I've put together a new song or stumbled upon a new idea and I can kind of add parts to it and flesh it out. And it's a song that I feel is, kind of bona fide and worth sharing. That's really where it gets rewarding, because you forget about the time put in, and you have a new piece of art, a new piece of music that you want to share with people, and that's always a good feeling.
Right, exactly. Even if it's just like to your friends or, like to the local radio station. And like, when you find out that they want to interview in regards to your album, which isn't even on a label, that's pretty damn cool.
Well, it's very flattering, like I said. And again, shout out to the internet. Like, this wouldn't have happened 30 years ago. So I'm just happy to be recognized in this way.
Right. And yeah, I'm one of those people that was coming of age when the internet was booming. So this is my generation now,
Pretty amazing. I mean, and it crosses generations. Like I wrote this song in my late 20s, in the late 90s, and now there are people even younger than me now who are finding it and liking it. And I did the same thing. When I first heard Muddy Waters, when I first heard the Beatles,
Oh yeah.
That's the great timeless thing about music. Yeah, if it's good, it'll endure, right?
Right, exactly. And there'll be people who are even younger than me who are listening to your music right now. Years later, they'll start making music, and who's to say they're not influenced by like artists like you or other obscure or other artists in general that they've heard, So we kind of already touched a little bit upon this, but what is the vibe you want to capture with your music? Because I find your work, it has a lot of different flavors to it, but there's usually a sense of quirkiness to them, whether if it's more somber sounding, whether it's more uplifting or pop rocky, country rock. Like there's always a quirkiness and just kind of like wholesome vibe to it.
Well, that's a great observation, and I've never heard anybody describe it that way. And actually, I've never thought of it that way, but I do have kind of a quirky sense of humor, and somehow it does find its way into the music or lyrics. But I mean, I have a rock background, and I've listened to country music most of my life, off and on, the older stuff. And the somber part is, a little bit of angst, I'll be honest. Like, like everybody, you have issues and maybe dealing with some trauma, and I've found that the music helps me. It's a great outlet to kind of release some of that, but also not take myself too seriously. So that might be where the quirky part comes in.
Yeah, and it's like, it's hard for me as the listener to explain what I mean by that, but it's like, I know it's there. Like, for example, one of my favorite bands of all time is a band called Tad. They're a Seattle band. They were around. They're not really well known, but they were very influential in the scene. I mention them a lot. Something about their band, even though their music was very like heavy and very dark sometimes, they always had a sense of humor where it's like you couldn't fully explain it, but just by listening to the music itself, it was there. Like it didn't take itself too seriously. It knew what it was and it was happy with it. I get that same vibe from your music, from everything I've heard so far. Like it's good not to take it too seriously, but to have fun with it.
I don't take myself too seriously, but I definitely take the music and whatever song or songs I'm working on seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they do have a quirky vibe, I have a song on my album Big Apple called Nursery, which doesn't really mean anything, but it just kind of has a funny vibe to it. It's always been what I've kind of chuckled at every time I hear it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a few others like that where it's sort of like this pop song. And I don't know, maybe that's where you get the Ween feel. Because I don't think those guys take themselves too seriously at all.
No, not at all.
I think it is that I care very much about the music and how the song, what the finished product is like, but I don't see myself as a serious artist necessarily, I guess.
I think an artist can absolutely take their work seriously and make it good, but also not take it too seriously, at the same time you're having fun with it.
Exactly. It's supposed to be fun. And it's fun. It's fun to record. It's fun to stumble upon a new idea, because if I just start with an acoustic and a vocal, I have no idea where the song is going to lead. And I might come up with a guitar riff that totally changes the song and takes it in a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of let instincts dictate and whatever, it's not me. I'm just channeling. I've heard that from songwriters before too. It's like, they're not in control. It's whatever's out there in the ether that comes through them. And, it's pretty interesting.
And the guitar is just the telephone that connects it.
Pretty much.
Speaking of which, I want to take a little bit of a different direction now too, because I want to talk in specific about your song Show You My Hand, the reason why we're here today. So, like I said, this was a song that was found in a KFC in Russia back in 2015. Wasn't solved until 2023 by a Discord user named Blue. I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, but I have it. It's Tipo Dual. He was the original poster who got it from a KFC back in Russia, posted it onto What's That Song in 2016. Blue, the Discord user, solves in 2023. That's the backstory for the song.
Wow. Nice forensic work there. That's great.
I try my best. Now that we have the actual artist here himself, the actual creator of the song, we're all dying to know. Tell us the backstory and the inspiration behind Show You My Hand.
Well, like I said before, it's kind of a love song between a couple, and they're singing to each other, and they're kind of being vulnerable. Show You My Hand, basically, to me, it always meant, I'm showing you my hand. I'm showing you my cards. I'm laying everything on the table. Yeah, that's kind of it. The inspiration came from the melody, which is usually the case for me. I will, sing gibberish over some chords and find the notes to sing and then add words later. But that's kind of how it came. And I remember writing the lyrics. I'm not a big lyric writer. I usually do it extemporaneously while I'm recording like a guitar or something. And then I'll go back and fill in words that don't sound like words, but kind of make them into, anyway. For this, I sat down and wrote stanzas of lyrics, and it just kind of flowed. And I don't have much more detail about that or where that came from, the inspiration, but that's kind of the story behind the song. And it was with my friend Claire, who sang it with me. And I don't remember how it became a duet, but I can't imagine her not being on that song, because it just works so well with the two voices, I think.
Oh, I agree 100%, because, her, like I said, her vocals and just her way of singing, it's just like the two words I could describe it as are warm and welcoming, because first time I heard the song, instantly I was hooked on the vocals, just because, you can hear it's a duet vocal style. You got your vocal style, and then you have hers. Yours, again, I feel has that more country rock vibe to it, but it works with an acoustic piece, whereas hers is just, it's playful, it's beautiful, and that refrain when she says, "I'll show you my hand," love that part. It's probably my favorite part of the song, just because I love her vocal so much.
It's giving me goosebumps right now, Nikki, I'll tell you. She's one of my dearest, oldest friends, and I've always loved her voice, so to be able to have captured it, and you know what, as a person, she is warm and welcoming, so I'm glad that comes across.
It does come across, and I will also say, just from the way I interpret the song, there's a bit of dichotomy to it, because, for example, just the lyrics, all of our worries, they'll be safe in my hands, there's nothing left here, should we move again? I feel like it's showing you that we'll be safe here with each other, but there's also a risk, and we're going to be vulnerable in this relationship. Should we continue? That's how I interpret it. So I think you're showing the side of a song about a relationship that I feel like not every song talks about. It's always about just being in love and just being happy with each other. You're my everything, stuff like that. Whereas with this, you show the other side that there is a risk to falling in love with someone.
I never thought of that, but you're right, because you have a lot of falling in love songs and you have a lot of breakup songs, but I don't know too many that are two people that are wanting to work on a relationship, and it might be there might be some challenges and there might be some other triumphs, but that's what a relationship is. It's not a Hollywood movie, you know?
Right, exactly. And I think that's probably why this hits home to me, because I'm a person who, you know, I find deep love in a lot of things, in people, in media. So, like, when I find lyrics like this that I get it, like, it connects with me, like, I really like it. That's why I really love this song, because the lyrics, you know, they stick with me, you know?
That's great. That's really great, Nikki. Yeah. I appreciate that a lot.
I was just going to ask, is Claire featured on any of your other songs? Because I've heard some other songs that I think she's featured on.
Yeah, there's another song on that album I mentioned, Big Apple. That was my first official release in 2003. And she is on a song with me called From the Inside, which is not so much a duet. She just kind of adds a little part in the B part of the song. And that also gives me goosebumps just listening to it. I just think she did a great job. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I don't think so. She and I were in Chicago at a certain time, and then she moved to LA and I moved to New York for a little while, so we were not able to do much together. And this is long before e-collaborating was a thing. We recorded some other stuff for her with her husband. We did like some country covers, Lucinda Williams and some other stuff just for fun. But as far as her on any more Happy Ashtray, I don't think, unless I'm forgetting something, but it's just really those two songs.
I think I got one for you. I was listening to your demo album, Do I Have to Travel Far? And I think she's on Speed of the Sound of Loneliness.
Oh, yeah. So that's another... I was very prolific in the first few years, but I didn't actually release anything. You know, this is the time when you had to, you know, get a bunch of CDs manufactured, and there was a lot of costs involved in releasing an album. It's a lot different now, where you could just kind of pop it on Spotify and wherever else. So that is actually a John Prine cover. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Speaking of country, he was sort of like a lesser known Bob Dylan. He has a bunch of great folk music that he wrote in the 70s. And he picked that song out of the blue once. She was over at my place, picked up a guitar. That's her playing the acoustic. And she started playing it. I was like, what is that? And she's like, oh, this is John Prine song. So I asked her to do it again. I rolled tape on it, and then I added all the other parts after the fact. It's turned into one of my favorite covers. So yeah, you're right. That is another one that she is singing on.
Yeah, because when I was doing research on your discography, I came across that song, and I was like, that's definitely Claire too. So I didn't know if she was like a reoccurring partner in crime when it came to these songs, but it seems like it was only just like a few songs here and there that she was featured on.
A few songs, yeah. And again, that stuff was unreleased, but I'd love to get it out officially so more people can hear it.
What is your reaction knowing that your song was once considered lost and you were once an unidentified artist? Like, you know, because when I talk to former unknown artists, they think like, again, they'll think it's a scam at first, but then they'll be like, oh my God, I'm completely elated. I think this is awesome. What is your reaction to that information?
Same. I was super skeptical at first, like I said, but then once it became obvious that it was a real thing, it was so flattering and exciting. I think that something I created that long ago had struck a chord with not only one person, but a number of people. And there was an actual effort to figure out who it was. And that's, you know, I've definitely heard songs throughout my life and have had a connection with them and thought, well, that's cool. Maybe I should look up and see who that is, but never do. And that multiple people have done that with my song is pretty awesome. It's very flattering.
The whole ideology of a song going lost and not being identified is called lost wave. So whenever a song is online from whatever origins, and no one can find the artist name or the song name, we call that lost wave. You know, we always just naturally have a fascination when we have a piece of media that it's there, it's available, we can listen to the song, but who the hell made it? No one knows who the hell made it. And so it just makes it that much more exciting when we actually find out who the artist is, and then we find out they have an entire discography that right. some of it's already, like, I looked it up, some of your stuff is already on Spotify, Apple Music.
I've got four albums on Spotify and the other platforms. I'd like to know, and maybe this would be hard to figure out, but how did the KFC in Russia get a hold of it? Who sent, you know, what song list were they playing? Who initially took the MP3 and uploaded it wherever it, you know, and that part is kind of interesting to me.
To my understanding, in the early 2000s, when file sharing websites were still a thing and such, apparently Russia liked to buy a lot of American things
Okay.
for bootleg purposes. There was another song that actually was unidentified for a while. It's called How Long Will It Take by a Canadian artist named Paula Toledo. And that was found on a bootleg DVD, and it was played at the main menu screen. Something like that was probably happening. As long as, Russians aren't kicking down our doors for our media, I think we're safe for now, so. You've also mentioned earlier that you're going to be re-releasing your first album in late 2024, to my understanding. Everybody Sees You. Tell us a little bit about that.
So this is the album of, I guess you could call them demos I put together. And it was really my first full-length collection of Happy Ashtray songs. I burned some CDRs and printed my own artwork and just passed it around and sent it to that one radio station in Chicago and got recognized for it. And that was pretty exciting. And it's always kind of been out there as something I wanted to do because I like the songs. I think they've held up. I think they're, Show You My Hand is one of them, but I think there's another 7 or 8 songs I'm really proud of, and I think that still hold up today. So I had been thinking about remastering and re-releasing, or officially releasing, and then this comes along, and it's almost sort of kismet. Like, this is a sign to tell me to keep doing it, or to keep working on it and actually follow through. Because I do have some follow-through problems, Nikki, sometimes. I like recording the songs, I just don't have I'm not good at releasing them. Because it's hard to pull a trigger on a finished album. I forget the quote, and if I'm butchering it, I apologize, but I think Jackson Pollock said, the painter, he never finished a painting, he just abandoned it. And I feel that way too. It's hard to know when a song is finished. I'm the only one making the decisions usually. But coming back to this album, I'm excited about the sort of the other, the outside interests of it. And I'm excited to release it and see who else, comes across it and likes it.
So this was something you were planning to do before the whole Lost Wave thing happened with you?
It was in the back of my mind and on my to-do list, but this occasion now, what we're talking about definitely has, kind of lit a fire under my rear end.
Nice. And does that also mean by any chance we're going to be getting a physical media release of it? CD, vinyl?
That I'm not sure of. Vinyl is a possibility, but for now I'm just kind of working on the songs, and because this is stuff I recorded a long time ago, and it definitely needs a little sweetening sound-wise. So I think once I'm done with that, I'll kind of think about a physical release. That's a good idea, because I know vinyl is just super popular again.
Yeah,
great.
It's making a comeback, and then you have nerds like myself who I like to collect CDs. Just because, listen, hot take, but I think CDs are way better than vinyl. They're cheaper, they're more accessible, but, that's a whole other argument.
Well, it's so funny to think about how none of that, CDs aren't even a thing anymore for most people, but there is a CD, I guess, a demographic of people who like CDs, just like there are people who like vinyl. It's pretty cool.
It is, and I feel like hardcore music collectors, like someone like Pete Pardo from Sea of Tranquility, Martin Popoff, these big guys, or maybe not Martin Popoff because he likes vinyl. I feel like just as a collector, it's easier to collect CDs because, again, they're cheaper and they're smaller. I also saw on your Facebook that you've been doing live performances as recently as October of last year. Are there any more planned concerts for the foreseeable future?
That's a good question. We have not scheduled anything yet. There'll probably be, we usually play out. I have a band with some friends that I put together maybe 20 years ago, and we've been playing here where I live in Wisconsin off and on. And we usually play 3 or 4 times a year. It's mostly for fun. We'll do something this summer, and I'll put the word out. But for me, it's the recording that's really the fun part. I love being in the studio. I enjoy playing music. I enjoy playing with my friends. It's many of my best friends in the band with me. I do like crafting the new song. That's really what drives me. I'm in a number of other bands that take up some time, and this Happy Ashtray has always kind of been a project for me, even though it's my true love. It has always been kind of a side thing in terms of playing out and that kind of thing.
You should name off some of your bands so I can leave them in the description so people can check them out.
Sure. I'm in an acoustic duo with my friend Susan, another fantastic female singer called Beautiful Buzz. We've got an album on Bandcamp, working on another as we speak, actually. There's also, I was in a funk cover band called Say It Ain't Soul, which is now defunct, no pun intended. And then I'm in another husband and wife, our singer-songwriter duo, acoustic folk. They're called Rustic Road. And I'm also recently just started playing with a Madison, Wisconsin musician named Teddy Davenport, and I sit in with him on occasion, which is really fun.
Wow. Busy man.
I like the variety,
No, I respect the hustle. I respect it, yeah. And it's good to keep busy like that.
For sure.
All right. I guess just to end off here, I always like to ask the artist this. What is your? All right, hold on. Take two. Let me catch my wording here.
No worries. Yeah.
As the final question, what do you want to say to the audience right now? What's your sign off for this interview?
Very flattered that this song has created this opportunity for me to talk to you and share my story a little bit. But I'm more excited to get this album out and not have it be an underground kind of thing. Who is this guy? Because the songs hold up, and that's kind of validation that Show You My Hand is, people still like it.
Oh my God, they love it. Yeah, and I know for a fact that when you eventually do release that remaster, like I said, that community that I'm a part of, the Lost Wave community, we're going to eat that right up, all right? Because what happens is when an artist gets identified in this community, we don't just all right, on to the next one. I mean, we do, but we also, so many of us, we go out and we actually listen to the other parts of your discography. That's why if you notice, since I'll Show You My Hand has been solved, I've seen uploads of albums of yours, other songs by you. Like, people find these things and they want to upload them and they want to share them with the world. So
that's amazing.
It is amazing. So
I really appreciate that. It says a lot about the stuff I've created and that it still holds up. And yeah, I look forward to releasing this. And anyone that wants to go listen to more, I have 4 albums on Spotify and iTunes. Big Apple, Weather Vane is a double album. 70 Miles, I'm really proud of. And then Hear Me In was during the pandemic. I released that during the pandemic. So it's really great that this is possible, and it's great to talk to you. And I just say, keep listening, and that will inspire me to keep releasing more music, and on we go.
On we go. John, thank you so much for your time for this interview. This has been an honor talking to you.
Nikki, I appreciate it. Great to talk to you too.
Of course.